I don't know about you, but when I hear data, engineering, numbers, sexy thoughts are unsurprisingly not the first thing that comes to my mind. But who knows? Maybe I've got it all wrong. And I'm hoping that our guest today can help shed some light on this, as her job is to basically engineer data-driven orgasms through maths and science.
Whether you're having partnered sex or not, I think self-exploration is so powerful.
Anna Lee is the co-founder of Lioness, a successful sex toy company that not only makes toys based on data, but also uses those toys to collect more data to continue the cycle of helping people, well, women, with better orgasms. I'm Sahar Zaid, a journalist on a quest to understand the world through the lens of how people do sex. Now, I have to admit, I've never actually owned a sex toy. I mean, I did once, and I can't believe I'm telling you this, but when I was 21, I went to Amsterdam for my birthday, and I may have bought this ginormous, ridiculous, translucent blue dildo that was like this big, just for laughs. And I think it was on sale for like €5. But it did smell really, really good. Like, think sweets and perfumes. It just had this really distinctive, nice, rubber, sweet smell. And the only place I actually stuck that dildo in or on was on the wall of my bedroom at university. It kind of became this permanent fixture in my room, and it did make my room smell really, really nice. That concludes all the sex toys I've ever owned in my time. And I have thought about getting sex toys before, but to be perfectly honest, I find them a little bit, I don't know, what's the word, like mechanical, intimidating sometimes. And sometimes a bit silly. They're just, I don't know, I just find them a bit weird. And none of those really inspire pleasure or sexy thoughts in me. But I do wonder, am I missing out?
I started out as an engineer at Amazon. I never thought I would actually be in the sex toy industry. It was never in my cards, or nor was I really looking at the space. But I just very fortunately one time met a founder of a different sex toy company, and it was this guy. And I remember asking him, how do you know what you're building works for women? He was like, there's this industry standard where you put the vibration on your nose, and that's what a clitoris feels like. And I remember just being like, that is the craziest thing. And I just realized that every single time a toy didn't work for me, or a toy didn't feel good, I always thought something was wrong with me. But I just realized that that's how toys were being tested. And I just thought, I have to figure out how to be a part of this industry.
And listen, next time I'm hitting on someone, I'd be like, hey, want to touch my nose?
I see.
Anna, we do this thing where we try to kind of get to know our guests, our contributors, a little bit outside of the stuff we're going to talk about. And
Sure.
we do this quick fire round of questions. The only rule is say the first thing that comes to your mind. Don't think about it. Just tell me the first thing, right?
Ooh, okay.
What's your most used emoji without looking at your phone?
Oh, it's probably the one that's shaking its head like this.
Why?
I don't know. It's either that or the nodding one. I just find it a little funny. I love little sarcastic things, and it's always sarcastically agreeing or being no.
Design or function?
Ooh, as an engineer, function.
Dildos or vibrators?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to say, you know what? I'm gonna say dildos, because aside from the vibrator that we make that I love, there's one that I always tell people about and I rave about. It's called the Enjoy. And it's like a stainless steel wand. It looks like the letter C. It looks a little scary for a lot of people, but I would say it's such a good starter toy. It's great for the G spot. It's great to learn if you want to learn how to do squirting. You can warm it up. You can make it cold. It's just the options, and it's so easy to clean. So I think from that standpoint, I'm gonna say dildo.
I love that you brought the clean into this. I never even think about that when I think sex toys. It's so
Easy
unsexy.
cleanability is very important to me.
And also the fact that you say if you want to learn how to squirt, I thought some people just can and some people just can't. Can you teach yourself how to squirt?
Yeah, honestly, I was not. I tell people all the time, like, I just thought my body is not one of those people. But I have an amazing friend down in New York. His name is Kenneth Flay, and he was always like known as like the master of squirting. And he is nerdy, even nerdier than I am in terms of like the body anatomy, how everything works. And he really broke it down to me from like an anatomical function. And then he also was like, the Enjoy is probably the greatest curvature because it's like two bulbs and then has like it's like very C-shaped. And it looks like something that wouldn't fit in your body, or you're like, is my body going to be pierced right through because it's so curved? But I think that was a toy that like really made sense for me in terms of like pushing the bounds of where I can touch within the vagina. And I thought, I don't know, I'm a believer. I think anyone can do it.
You did it?
Yes. That's why I'm always like, I think I'm a believer now.
It's not a myth?
It's not, well, I don't know if every single person can do it. That obviously, I'm not going to speak for like everyone can do it, but I was very much in the camp of like, I don't think I'm a person that can do it. I've never been able to do it with my partners who have tried. Like, it's just never worked for me. But then, yeah, I think it was just like really sitting down and like getting, or I guess lying down and then getting used to like what I'm looking for, what I'm trying to feel, and just reaching places that I don't think I could have gotten manually through a hand, and it worked for me.
Is it really that good? Like, is it better than a normal orgasm? Is it something that everyone should strive or try for?
No, I actually think that the myth of the reason of why like they say like, oh, squirting's really cool and it's part of an orgasm, and it's actually something that we always try to tell people, like, it's actually not an orgasm at all. It like doesn't have to tie in with each other. But it is just releasing of like your Skene's glands. And then also I've read a couple of research papers where they've done like ultrasounds of the bladder while it's happening. And the bladder does inflate first that moment, and then it does expel. So the whole question of like, is it pee? It has some pee in it, like I would say like a lot of body functions. So it has a little bit of pee. It has a little bit of your like Skene's gland fluids, like all these little things. So I don't think it's as amazing as an orgasm. I think it's just like a cool party trick.
Party trick?
I think it's just the beauty of like human curiosity of like what can happen, what can't happen. And sometimes like in like a partnered like sex, it elevates the experience of it feeling just like so maybe like dirty or like so carnal, and I think that's really cool about it. But is it as good as an orgasm? Would I say like everyone needs to do it? No, I think it's also so messy. Like, I love my bed sheets. I would have to do a whole setup just to make it feel like it's like clean, and it's easy cleanup. But I think it's like a cool
that
thing to do.
That just sounds like too much admin for a cool party trick that maybe one other person gets to see.
Yeah. If I have to choose, if your question is like squirting or orgasms all day.
Okay, great. But they're not one and the same. They're not like this myth of it's this insane orgasm.
No, not at all.
Okay. But you can orgasm and squirt at the same time.
Yes, you absolutely can. But it just isn't like a squirting isn't considered an orgasm. But you can totally do it at the same time, which I think a lot of people, or like the sensation of like that going over is what people are like, oh, so it's an orgasm. But at least from a physiological standpoint, you don't have the same pelvic floor contractions as you would during an orgasm. So yeah.
Why does your body do it? Like, why?
I have no idea. I mean, we don't even really know the exact answer of why women or people with vulvas have orgasms. So I think it's all one big question mark. It's just kind of, again, I love to tell people it's a party trick.
I don't know. I think we orgasm because we have it so tough, and like sex often turns quite often bad for women. So let us have one thing. Come on.
I agree.
Before I continue, I gotta ask. Tell me about the first time you squirted. Do you mind?
Oh yes, it was. You know what? It must have been like in my mid to early to mid 20s, like maybe 24, 25. And there was one time where I was with a partner and I did accidentally squirt. But again, I think the other myth is like when you squirt, it's like a huge gush of fluid, which could happen. But I think a lot of times people have seen it in porn, and a lot of adult entertainers will tell you they're putting water in there before they get that money shot. So it's not always like a huge amount of fluid. It's really like, it can be like a little trickle or whatever. And so I remember there's one time I was with a partner and then he was fingering me and then like fluid did come out. And then he was like, is that? And I was like, I don't actually know. But at least the way that everyone has explained what squirting feels like, of like that intense feeling where it's almost borderline uncomfortable of like, do you need to pee? Or like that same sensation of like, is it an orgasm or am I going to pee kind of feeling? So it did feel like that. And a small amount of fluid came, but I like could never really fully know whether it was it. But I think it was only of recently, like within the past 5 years, when I bought that Enjoy because everyone was telling about it. And I was actually doing it alone and just like at home and like on my bed and like just trying to kind of feel whatever that sensation is kind of beyond what people tell you, like the comfortable, but then you're almost on the borderline of feeling uncomfortable. And then that's what I did like a decent amount where I was like, okay, I think I get it. Like, I think I get what the feeling that you're looking for is. But yeah, I always like to think of it like, I don't know. I like to think of my body as like, I'm like a scientist of my own body. And I love experimenting of like things that's like, oh, that like works or that's interesting. So yeah, it was only as of recent where I felt very sure that I understand what I'm looking for when I'm trying to get there.
I really didn't expect us to land here when I asked you vibrators or dildos. What a turn. What a turn. Data or instinct?
Oh, data, I would say. I think again, as like as a engineer at heart, like I love things that are data driven, and also I love things that have research behind them and things like that. It doesn't always happen, obviously, but I think by heart, I love data.
Last question. Test lab or bedroom?
Oh, I would say my bedroom is a test lab.
Oh my God. Sexy. I'm going to level with you. I have never, ever owned a sex toy.
Really?
And yeah. And I lost my virginity quite late. I was like 20. And then I went a bit crazy. I slept with, I think, like 30 men or something in
Amazing.
a year and a bit. I was like, why have I been not doing this? And I wasn't sure if I'm having orgasms or not. I knew that I was enjoying the experience, but I wasn't sure. And I hear this from a lot of my friends. Now I can tell them, if you're not sure, you haven't had one. But when I was like 22 or something, after all these men, I was revising in my room at university. And I can't say this with a straight face. My little sister's best friend had given her a massage gun as a birthday present. And my sister had left it behind. I hope to God she never listens to this podcast or watches it. I will make sure she doesn't. Anyway, so I was like massaging my neck, revising this really boring thing about architecture. And then it dropped on my lap. And then I was like, I can't explain too much, but that was like such a turning point in my life because I felt something that I hadn't, and when I least expected it. And then I kind of explored that. Long story short, that's when I had my first ever orgasm. It was a micro. But then, listen, Anna, I got obsessed. I didn't leave my student room for weeks. That changed my life, but that was it. So I guess my question to you is, as someone who, I mean, that wasn't a sex toy, but in a way it was, right? In a way it functioned as it. And it kind of completely changed how I experience sexual pleasure. As someone who doesn't own sex toys or has never really used them, am I missing out?
Oh, I don't know if it's a missing out per se. I also love, I mean, you kind of have used the sex toy. You've used the massage. It's kind of similar technology. It's a motor. There's a battery. It's powered in some way. Some would argue like the Hitachi Magic Wand is a massager plus a vibrator, and it's just a very strong vibrator. But I would say it's not so much about missing out, but it's probably the thing that I love doubling down on is like whether you're having partnered sex or not, I think self-exploration is so powerful. And I think it's so uniquely different than when you're with a partner. So I never like, I think people always are like, are you replacing a man or if you're or replacing a partner, if you're getting a sex toy or if you masturbate or all these different things. But I think I find them two very different things in terms of like, I don't know, my vibrator's not going to tell me good night or like good morning in the morning or, you know, like things like that. But
Not yet, not yet.
yeah, not yet. Actually, that's very true. Maybe the AI will get there. But I think there's so much importance in like self-exploration. Do you need a vibrator specifically? No. I think you could totally do it. You could self-explore with your hands, with just your thoughts, whatever. Like whatever works for you, whatever is helping you understand what feels pleasurable or what moments make you feel more aroused, what you want to feel when you're having partner sex. I think vibrators are just a very great way to get there. It's sometimes really hard to do it manually, or I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I only have 30 minutes today. Like, I'm not going to even bother trying to do it with my hands. Like, it's sometimes a vibrator is like nice helper. And I think even with partner sex, like it's a nice helper. So, it's not so much about missing out, but I think it's about self-exploration and how helpful it could be.
So without giving out too much, because people will be listening to this, self-exploration, no problemo. And,
Yes.
and without sex toys for me. But like, I have wondered, am I missing out in reaching new realms of pleasure? Am I missing out on developing myself more than, you know, what I discovered all those years ago? Like, could I be having better sex if I did start using them?
I think again, this goes into like an exploration thing for me. Like, for example, I grew up in a very conservative religious family. I grew up in Korea till I was 8, and then we moved to the U.S. With my parents' hopes of like us achieving their American dream. I like grew up very terrified of my body. I tell people all the time, like I did not like really feel comfortable till like my 23, 24. And when we started the company, like my co-founder laughs because I was always like, don't ever make me do interviews. Like I never want to have to talk about my personal sex life. I never want to have to say the word clitoris. Like I was very scared. And even with partners, I was never able to explain like what's working for me and what's not. So I would say for me, like I knew I could masturbate. I masturbated since I was like I want to say like middle school, high school. And I knew what that felt like, but I never like really went beyond what I knew, I kind of thing. And I think one of the coolest things with me and working on Linus is like, I really do believe in this idea of like knowledge is pleasure. And you get a little bit more curious about your body. So there's like little things like, oh, I wonder if I like do it the moment I wake up instead of doing it right before I sleep, is there a difference in that? And like all of a sudden kind of learning little things about my own body. So like, oh, do I like a little bit of like anal stimulation, or do I like a little bit of nipple play? And that's like things that I get to learn kind of from the safety of my own self, like masturbating. And like maybe there is like a nipple toy. There's like this like little suction nipple toys or like an anal plug or little things like that. Or like even like a lubricant that's like maybe is supposed to help bring blood flow or like that has CBD in it. And then you just start kind of trying little things and then learning a little bit more and more about yourself. And for me, the best thing it did for me was it made me feel so confident in knowing what I liked and what I didn't like that it translated when I was with partners. Like I used to be so scared to talk to my partners about like, well, can you do this? Or like, can you try this on me or like whatever? But I felt so confident being like, I know I really like this. Like, can we do this? Like all these different things. So to me, it was more that it gave me tools for exploration of like things that I get to do just by myself and being like, okay, I do like that before I like brought it into the bedroom or like trying it within a bedroom. So I would say like toys were really powerful for that. Like I think, and like different sensations of like, do I like the suction toys more than the vibration toys? Or do I like internal toys more than the external toys? Or do I like when I feel the sensation both the same time? Do I like a certain curvature of a toy that's like stimulating my G spot maybe a little bit more than I can reach with whatever, like a finger or like a straighter dildo or whatever? So to me, it was just more of a, I think it just gives you the ability to explore a little bit more and just get a little bit more curious about your body and just like continuing to do that. So to me, that's what I think toys have the ability to do.
That was really enlightening. And there's a few things I want to say. One, I am a journalist, so like you, I'm very curious.
Yeah.
And it baffles me that I still haven't explored that. Two, you say little things like anal plug or whatever. To me, that's my Everest. Like, that's not little. Three, when you say like you came from an immigrant family to the US for the American dream, I relate so hard. Like, I'm also an immigrant. You know, I was 12 when I left Iran, and you know, I was also from a society that was very sexually oppressed, and you know, sex wasn't really something we spoke about. I think I'm 36 now, right? I think I've ever spoken to my mom once about masturbation. Once. I think I was really drunk and I was like in my mid-20s or something, and we were playing like this truth or dare game with my mom and my cousins. It was so stupid. And like the word masturbation came up, and my mom is quite an open person. She's, you know, very open-minded. She was like, I would never, like, this shame has always existed. But for me, it actually makes me reflect back on myself and my life and my choices, because I'm like, I have no problem with masturbation. In fact, I talk about it openly because I feel like more women should do it. Is it the stigma that exists in the society? Like, from your experience as someone who works in the sex toy industry, who is so data-driven, who is so curious, do you find that there is a stigma, and why do you think that is, even within the Western societies where sex and orgasms aren't as hush-hush, aren't as taboo as there are in many other cultures?
Yeah, at least I can speak from, I think, because that's something that I thought about a lot too. Because like I didn't buy my first toy till like, I don't remember how old I was, but it was later, and it definitely like didn't fully get this whole arsenal of toys until like really working on this company and just really exploring all the possibilities out there. But I think for me, and I think my guess for a lot of people, is sex toys are historically a male-dominated industry. It wasn't really targeting women to purchase. It was targeting men to purchase for their significant other, because they're like, I need to buy something that's going to spice up our sex life. Like, and so that's where really those like packagings with adult entertainers, like on the box, or it's pink and purple with glitter and has like 2 million different functions, and it like does all these crazy patterns. But I think if you talk to most women, they're going to be like, there's 3 settings I like. I don't like patterns. I don't really want it to be pink with glitter and have a bunny rabbit on it, or whatever the case is. But I think especially how we frame sex toys for many, many years, it was very much in the lens of like the male gaze, I would say a lot. It's like it felt very pornographic, and it felt like you had to be a certain kind of like super sexually embraced like person to use them. And I think for me, that's why it always felt like, well, those aren't really made for me, or like, I don't know, like if I buy this, like, does it mean I'm a certain kind of person? And it just, I think I got into my head a lot about what it meant to use that toy and what it meant for me as like, who am I as a person?
That is so true.
Yeah, I think we could relate a lot. It's just something sometimes you're like, well, I don't really identify like that, or like I don't want this like thing that's like called like, I don't know, Cockbuster 4000 and has veins all over it, and you know, it looks crazy. And I was like, that's not really what I'm looking for. And so you just think that they're not meant for you. And I think a lot of times that's how we associate sex toys, because of this like historical thing of what sex toys were, who were they meant to target, what was selling. And they really went into this idea of like sex sells, so we got to make it super sexy, we got to make it hypersexual and all these different things.
When I go to like some shops and I see them and I giggle sometimes, I go back to the body of my 12-year-old self, and I'm like, ah! And then I do that, I like poke the rabbit, and it just feels a bit silly. It feels like, it feels so mechanical and silly, which is not what my brain associates with sex. So obviously you are now the co-founder of a very, very successful sex toy company, and you're the engineer behind it. Tell me about the sex toys that you guys are making.
Yeah. So our vibrator is called Lioness. We do a biofeedback vibrator that is measuring your orgasm data. So it's going to show you what your orgasms and pleasure looks like. So I always equate it to, like, we used to say Fitbit for your vagina, but then I think Fitbit saw it a couple of times in press and they were like, please stop using us as a comp. The idea is that we track so many different things in our lives, and there's research showing that when you have biofeedback data and you get this understanding, it does help you understand your body better, and it does help lead to improvements in your overall wellness and health. And we're doing that same thing with sexual pleasure. We're giving you access to your own pleasure data and how it changes over time, what makes it better, what makes it worse, and all of those different things.
Okay, now I get the concept. How does that work in practice? Like, if I got one of your Lioness vibrators, and is it only vibrators that you guys make, or do you have like... Okay,
it's a
so if I got
vibrator.
Rabbit style.
Yes.
Okay, I hate that it's a rabbit. Why? I don't know. There's something a bit weird about a rabbit. I think that also...
Actually there's like a lore as to like why they're called rabbit style vibrators, and it's like originally when it was, I guess, like those style vibrators were made in Japan, but when they looked too like phallic or too realistic, people were like, that's very obscene and grotesque and all these different things. And then they were figuring out how to make it more palatable. One, that it like flies under laws, and then maybe like women might like it more, and they're like, we got to put cute animals on it. And then it was Vibratex, I think, was the first company in the US that were like, okay, I think we put rabbit, like a little bunny rabbit on where the clitoral stimulator is, like little bunny ears. And that's just kind of how it's stuck into why it's called a rabbit vibrator.
I hate it. Like, I don't want a cute pink animal's ears on my parts. Like, that is not sexy. I hate that they're still rabbits. So, you guys only do vibrators.
Yes.
Lioness vibrators. And you were explaining how contextually they work. You know, you collect all this data, how they're used, they go on this app. But how do they work in practice? Like, if I got one now, like, how would I be using it?
Yeah, so what we're measuring is on the shaft, there are 2 force sensors. So what we're measuring is your pelvic floor contractions. We know that's one of the best indicators for arousal and orgasms. And orgasms specifically, there's a very unique pattern that happens with your pelvic floor contractions during an orgasm. There's other physiological things that obviously happen during an orgasm, like your pupils dilate, you sweat a little bit, your heart rate increases, but those are actually very hard things to track from a sensor perspective. So you would use the vibrator, you could sync it with your app or just use it by itself and it'll record that data automatically. But I always love to tell people, like, you could see the data come in real time. So you could see how your pelvic floor muscles are contracting and relaxing while you're looking at your phone. And then during the orgasm, we always tell people you should mark it, like at least the first couple live, so that you could actually see exactly where your orgasm starts and stops and really see what that data specifically looks like. But yeah, what we're looking for is that really unique pattern that happens during the orgasm. And then from there, we're encouraging people to do sex experiments of, like, how does caffeine affect it? How does it affect it if you're doing daytime versus nighttime? How does alcohol affect it? And how does exercise affect it? And just start experimenting with what's making those orgasms longer, stronger, faster, shorter, all these different things.
Just being curious. I mean, I'd be curious. In a way, it takes the mystery and the sexiness out of it, but at the same time, it makes, I guess it would make you feel more in control. And if you're able to, like, basically figure out how to do it better, then why wouldn't you?
I always tell people it's kind of like taking the sexy out of sex. And I obviously that doesn't resonate with every single person, and it doesn't need to. But I think there are people, I think similar, like, I think we're similar in how we kind of feel and, like, our upbringing and, you know, just like the things that we've grown up with and, like, how we understand sex. And I think for me, it helps so much taking that sexiness out of sex and just being like, oh, that's what my body does, or like, this is what's working for me, and that's not what's working. That's not what works for me. And it just helped me get more sexual as a person because I got to look at it from such a nerdy perspective first.
Do you know what? That is kind of one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast series, because I struggle so much like asking my questions, these things about sex and sexuality. But I thought, when do I ever really get into something and really explore it? When it's a part of my work, when I can geek out on it. And while you take the sexiness out of it, then you actually start like asking these questions that will help you hopefully later have better sex. And yeah, I totally personally see the appeal. So you told me about like gathering this data to help the users basically monitor, track their orgasms and how to later have better orgasms. Do you guys also have access to this data? Because you can do wonders with that, no?
Yeah, so we do it. So the data is all aggregated and anonymized. So my mom, for example, has a vibrator. I don't know if she's ever used it, but it's one of those things where I'm like, we can't see the data in the sense of like, oh, I know that my mom used it yesterday morning. Like, I'll never know that information.
I think I will kill myself. I will.
Yeah.
I will go and jump off a bridge if I ever knew my mom used any sort of sex toy.
So yeah, it's not things that I want to know, and yeah, I won't be able to know. So what we're looking at really is aggregate data of like what is an average length of an orgasm that we're seeing in our group of users. And then if you want to give us more detailed data, we have a research platform where you can donate your data. And if there's a researcher that's like, hey, I'm trying to do research on, for example, women in their 50s, and they can say, yes, I want to donate my data to this research. So we'll connect them to that researcher and kind of send over their very specific data, but it'll never be tied to your name, location, or anything like that. It's all going to be always anonymized. You're going to have a research ID. But so we look at it from a perspective of like kind of aggregate data.
So you must have access to lots of really, really cool, unique information.
Yeah.
Tell me, like, what are some of the coolest things you found out?
Yes, I would say the best thing that we love telling people is what we've seen is three unique patterns that happen during an orgasm. And this is something that was actually published as an abstract in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. That was a paper led by Dr. Jim Faust and Dee Hartman, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist and researcher. So we see three unique patterns that happen. We've given them cute names. We've called it the ocean wave, the avalanche, and the volcano. The ocean wave is going to be during the orgasm. You're seeing this like squeeze and relax, squeeze and relax. It stays very steady throughout the whole time. It lasts around 20 to 23 seconds. It's the most common one. I would say 60 to 65% of people have this pattern. It's this very unique squeeze and relax. I'm also that ocean wave pattern. The avalanche is similar into ocean wave, where it is the squeeze and relax, but it starts higher.
So sorry to interrupt. So like that's how some people just have an orgasm, like
so their muscles are going like this, like squeeze, relax during the orgasm. So it's going like this, like a little kind of steady ocean tide. And then the avalanche is going to be similar, where you're having the squeeze and relax, but it starts higher in force. And then you're seeing this trickle down. So you're seeing it getting softer and softer squeezes as it kind of ends the orgasm. And that one is the second most common. And then the third, which is the most rare, I would say it's like 10% of users we've seen. You're seeing a very quiet, and then a huge explosion of force, and then a huge drop in force, less of that really rhythmic contraction that we're ever seeing. So I was like, that's a really fun thing to tell people is like, typically you land in one of those three categories of how your orgasm pattern looks. And so we always tell people like, it makes you start thinking about, oh, I wonder what my orgasm is, or like how mine feels. So that's probably one of the biggest ones that is the coolest things that we've learned.
That is really cool. So like people basically don't have orgasms the same way. Can like one person experience more than one of those, or do people tend to have just one type of orgasm?
Yeah, it was really funny because when the paper got published, what we've seen in our data is that we haven't seen people really jump from one pattern to another. So like kind of like, for example, I'm an ocean wave, and I will probably consistently see ocean waves. Like if there's anything that changes, it's like the ocean wave is less strong, or it's shorter, or it's longer, depending on like the pleasure experience. But I think once we put that out, so many people have written in being like, I swear I can have at least two, or I've had all three, and all these different things. So I wouldn't say it's definitive that you're one type. And actually, even for me, 7 years later, I once or twice have seen myself be an avalanche type. And that's when I really practiced like edging. And so
What's
I think
edging?
it's possible. Edging is when you get really close to an orgasm and then you cut off the sensation. So you like dial back and then you keep doing that and you keep leading to like close to an orgasm, pull it back, keep leading to an orgasm, pull it back, which actually is one of the most effective ways to see your orgasms get stronger and really like longer as a whole. So we always recommend people try edging as like a very accessible thing that you could do at your home. You don't need to buy anything extra and all of that. I think for the most part, we've seen people be the same, like one pattern, but I'm not going to ever say like you can have all three. We just haven't seen anyone submit their data to us that's like, here, me having all three of those patterns.
How am I 36 years old and didn't realize there are different types of orgasms or different
no
ways
one
to have
ever,
them?
I mean, it's the reason why we started Lioness and like why we love doing it to this day is like there's so little information out there on sexual pleasure, especially for women. I think, I want to say like at least in our niche, like orgasm patterns, I think there's something really cool we can learn from it. We've seen things like an athlete who wrote in and she had a concussion and she saw her data completely flatline, like not really seeing the orgasm anymore post concussion. And she was like, do you think this has to do with the concussion? And I was like, honestly, we don't know. Like there are maybe some sightings in papers saying that traumatic brain injuries can have an effect on your overall sexual function, but it's not something that's studied or known. And so it was so she was getting physical therapy for her concussion, and over the months, like 3 months later, her orgasms looked back to normal from what she originally was getting before the concussion. So there's all these little interesting things I think the orgasm data can really tell us. Like it's fun, obviously, like love talking about it from a fun perspective, but I also think it can be a canary in the coal mine for overall health things that we just don't know yet. Like, if a guy comes in and he's like, I'm having erectile dysfunction, the first thing they check for is cardiovascular disease. But we don't really have the equivalent. When we come in and we're like, I'm not having orgasms or like something's wrong, they're like, I don't know, could be like, who knows, like maybe it's in your head kind of thing. And so we don't really know.
You're telling me a lot of things I didn't know. And sadly, what you're saying now, I know far too well. Look at any industry to do with anything to do with women's sexual health, women's pleasure. There is so much data lacking, and it's as if like it's such a, I want to say second thought. It's not even a second thought.
No,
it's just so freaking upsetting. But tell me more about some of the cool facts you found out, because I also want to ask you a few questions about your past.
Yeah. Of the 15 experiments that we've done, the two that really stand out to me is edging. I think it's the easiest one. Like anyone can practice edging. And the other one that I think is really worth exploring is caffeine. I think it's something that's not super often talked about, but there's something about caffeine. I think the orgasms itself, we've seen from the aggregated results that it's shorter, but it's much stronger. It has like a bigger punch to it. So I think there's something interesting there worth exploring that hasn't really been explored. There's not much research on caffeine and orgasms.
That kind of makes sense to me. I thought it was just that being really, really bored, which is often when I'm doing very boring work, is what does it for me. But maybe it's the caffeine, because they go hand in hand.
So much That's so interesting, actually.
Yeah,
that should be a study in itself, honestly.
What's the average length for an orgasm?
So ours, we've seen last year, the total aggregate, I believe, is 26 seconds. It's going to be right in between that 24 to 27 seconds.
26 seconds?
Yeah, women orgasms tend to be a lot longer. And what we're measuring is like when that kind of rhythmic flow or like that big explosion stops and ends. And it tends to be right around that 24 to 27 seconds.
I think I don't know. Like I haven't got your app. I haven't measured it, but I think for me maybe it's like much quicker. Is it that like we're not aware that it starts happening, or is it that could I be in the volcanic category?
It could be the volcanic category. I would say like for me, like a very typical day, like I would say sometimes it goes from like 14 seconds. And sometimes I feel like it's shorter, but then when I look at my Lioness data, it's actually within like that 22-second range. So sometimes it just feels short, but it could be longer, like in terms of what your body is really doing.
Maybe time really does fly when you're having fun.
Yeah. And it's fun because I always say like men's orgasms, I think they say is like 7 to 12 seconds or something in that range. So like, we're like, yeah, women are having so much more fun.
I think I need to get your product.
Yeah, we're going to have to get you
advertise it. So you have done so well in this industry. You're speaking to me, you know, you've spoken to the media before. So your parents, your family must know what you're doing. I mean, I'm sure my mom knows about this podcast. I've really tried not to tell her about it or not to have her listen to it, not because she would judge me, just because I would die inside. But like, having come from South Korea, you know, you said that, you know, your family were quite, that's what I heard, were quite sexually oppressed, perhaps in terms of the language used or how much sex was spoken about. Like, I sense that you and I come from a similar sort of background in a way that you don't talk about sex. You're a good girl does certain things. But now you are doing this. What do your mom and dad, what does your mom make of what you do?
Honestly, I'm really proud of my mom, and I'm really proud of the relationship we ended up building. I think I never thought we would get to a place where, one, she knows about what I do and we could be so comfortable with it. But it wasn't, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say like it was all perfect. And then when she found out what I do, she was like, oh yeah, I'm so proud of you for anything like that.
What did she say?
So I had quit Amazon and I was like working on this full time, but I actually didn't tell her because I knew it would break her heart that like I quit this like big corporate job. It was like the thing that she was so proud that I was doing. And I didn't tell her for like, I want to say like 8 months. And then she was like, hey, you've been so quiet. I haven't really heard from you. You're not calling as much. She's like, I'm going to come visit San Francisco. She's like, I want to see how you're doing. And I knew I should just I like had to tell her. And so she came and I showed her our co-working space at the time. Like we were bootstrapping the entire company, and like we were like sharing this desk at this like building with like 20, 30 desks, and I had all these vibrators that were like broken apart because I was trying to see how they like built it. And she came and I was like, you know, like I'm working on this thing. I'm trying to see if I can like build a company that's doing like this smart vibrator. And I told her how important it was for me as like my own personal journey to feel comfortable about my own body. And she knew that like I was so like repressed in a lot of ways. And there were like things that had happened in my childhood where I just felt very like not connected to my body. And she knew this, but we never talked about it. And so she was really quiet. She was listening. And I was like, she's going to end me. I was like, this is going to be my last dying words because she's going to kill me. And then she was like, you know, when I was younger, like, she's like, I like used to have a vibrator and I like, it was like a Japanese brand. And I was like, oh, okay. And then from the next 2 hours, she was like, we talked about it, like her sex life, my sex life. She asked me when I first had sex. She was just we just started talking about all these different things. And it was like such a crazy moment that I'm like, I can't believe it happened. And it was so beautiful and disgusting all at the same time. Because I'm like, it's beautiful that like I'm so glad my mom and I opened up about something that I thought we would never ever talk about. But then at the same time, it's like I'm not gonna lie, it's gross. Like I don't want to know so many things about my mom. I don't want to know about her sex life a lot of times and all these things. And I was like giving her advice. And so, but it was like a moment where I was like, oh, I do think she kind of has a chance to like, you know, really see this as like something that she can be proud of. Many years continuing, she was always like, okay, so when are you gonna get like a real job? Like when is this like project or like this little thing you're doing over? When are you get a real job? Like all these things. So she, you know, she still says it in passing very often. But I think overall, the fact that I was like, able to give her a Lioness and she knows what I do. And I once like had a newspaper from a Korean newspaper that's like big in LA, in Koreatown in LA. And that was probably like the most proud I've been because it was all written in Korean. It's something that she was able to read and just like kind of really see like what I was working on. So I think there's like little moments like that I'm like, yeah, like I think my mom's really cool compared to maybe most parents if their daughter was like, yeah, I'm going to work on sex toys for the rest of my life. But yeah, there's like little things sometimes. I mean, I'm sure she really still hopes that I'm getting a real job and that's the point.
That is so funny to hear. That is such a, and I'm not talking about Asian as in like your type of Asian, because
Yeah.
I'm also Asian.
Yeah.
I'm Iranian. That is such an Asian parent
It
response.
really is.
Like,
It really
like,
is. You know, the best was when I got Forbes 30 under 30, I was like, wow, like that's such a, I don't know, I felt so accomplished. And I like told my mom, I like called my mom and I was like, Mom, like I made the Forbes list. And she's like, oh, so like does it come with money? Does that mean you made money? And then I was like, no, it's just like a recognition thing. And she's like, oh, okay, that's nice. And I was like, that was the most like my mom, I don't know, such an Asian experience of like, oh, that's cool. Like, does it make you money? Are you gonna take me on a vacation?
are you a doctor yet?
Yes.
Like, Anna, you mentioned something, and I wonder if you're comfortable talking about it. I mean, only if you want to. But you said that you had a certain experience when you were younger that made you disassociate. Can I ask what that was?
Totally, yes. So I had experienced sexual trauma like when I was, I think probably from like, I want to say like 9 to 14 years old. Like there was like a adult man in my life that had basically just like I think have experienced a lot of sexual trauma from. And I like really couldn't I really couldn't process, I think, in my head what it meant to be like molested by an adult or anything like that. Because I think especially at the time, no one talked about it. And I like, you know, went through depression. And I think the idea of depression is also something that I think it's just mental health wise, we didn't talk about, I think, growing up. It was very much like, I don't know, like you just have to like suck it up. You have to keep doing well in school and all of these different things. And I think the only way I could feel in control of my body as I was getting older was like, the only way I could control it was like, oh, I didn't really deserve to like enjoy my body, or like my body wasn't meant for like sexual experiences. Like that was the best way I could like compartmentalize before I went to therapy, before I like really processed everything. And so I think very much like I just didn't feel like my body was like really a part of me, or like that if I had sexual experiences that it was like quote unquote wrong. And so I felt very like disassociated from my body, or like very that like sexual pleasure wasn't really going to be a part of my life, or like that I couldn't really embrace my sexuality, or I couldn't be a sexual person. And I think that was something that I like really experienced, you know, into my 20s, and then really had to confront through, you know, I always tell people like therapy, if you can get it, like if you can have access to it, super important. And it really was like the journey for me, and why Lioness was just an important journey for me of like learning it from an unsexy place of being like, oh, like that's just what your body does. This is like normal. This is what your body is supposed to do, or like this is how it can like be affected, or all these different things. And so that was really important to me as part of my journey. And I think one of the things is like my mom had known it had happened, but it was too hard to talk about, I think, as a family at the time, like just because it was too hard of a conversation. It was too hard to talk about like the process of all of it. And so I think that was like one of the most beautiful moments where when I did tell her why I was working on this project, or like Lioness, and why it meant so much to me, she at the end of, you know, us having this 2-hour sex talk, she was like, you know, I always wondered if you were going to be okay. And she's like, I am happy that this probably means like you're gonna be okay. And I think I was like, yeah, like I think so too. Like I think I'm like facing all the different things through this product, like building this product. And so it was very meaningful for me. And it was like a very, yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing of like, I would say like my, beyond like the, you know, like this sex toy founder being like, oh, put it on your nose and that's what a clitoris feels like. And I'm like, that needs to change. But I think it really was just like a personal journey for me as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I went through a similar thing when I was very young. And I guess that could play a part in what we were talking about, in not wanting to see yourself as a sexual being. And I do wonder if that's why I'm sort of kind of against sex toys, for example, because it kind of like takes you back to that place of trauma, to that if I'm experiencing a certain thing, my brain connects it to a certain trauma. And I'm actually in therapy for that right now. So it's really interesting hearing you say that. And you alluded to it, but I want to ask it in a more black and white way, if you don't mind. Do you think that sex toys and really getting into them and really geeking out over your orgasms and how you experience pleasure. Has that helped you overcome or make sense of that trauma?
100%. And I think why I feel so passionate, like, I think the reason why I want to stay in this industry forever and why I feel so passionate about what we do, I think is the idea of like, I really do think knowledge is pleasure. Like, I think the getting to be able to know your body, and I think obviously having partners is is an incredible experience. But I think a lot of times, a lot of us have learned maybe sex or what sex is supposed to look like or feel like through the lens of a partner, right? Like, I think a lot of women, especially who are in heterosexual relationships, will very often be like, well, what my like partner showed me, like, this is what I'm supposed to do, or like, this is what I should do, or like, this is how long it should last. And I think there's something so powerful about masturbating, having toys, and like really experiencing pleasure for your own self. And I think there's something so, so powerful that we don't get maybe often from like a partnered experience. And so I think I think there's just so much about like feeling like it's like a tool for empowerment, I think a lot of times for a lot of us, and just feeling like, oh, like, this is just how I am as a person. And like, and then bringing that to another person versus like exploring that. It's sometimes hard to do it, exploring with another partner and only doing it in that way. And so, yeah, I think there's something very, very, very beautiful. I think beyond obviously like, yeah, sex is fun, orgasms are fun, masturbating is fun, but I think there's just something so beautiful about giving yourself, and I think especially women, like your own time to like explore your pleasure just for yourself.
It allows you the opportunity to allow yourself to explore pleasure, not for someone else, but for you. And in doing so, regaining back that power that was once taken away from you because it was for somebody else's pleasure.
Yeah, that's beautifully put.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Yes.
So, Anna, we like to end our episodes by asking our guests how they do sex. I want to ask you the same question, but I guess you really answered it throughout the episode in so many ways. And apart from everything we've spoken about, how do you do sex with other people?
Well, I'll say something maybe like totally offhand is I think there's so much to be explored with THC and orgasms. I think there's something really, really cool there. So I would say like it's one of my favorite little hobbies to add on to doing sex. How's that?
Is it to take it? Because I know that THC is like become huge. A lot of people take gummies that gives them better orgasms, or, you know, I know that there are oils that you rub in certain parts. What do you do?
I'm a huge fan of THC lubricants. It's really hard to find nowadays. You can make it yourself with a little DIY and like a slow cooker, like a crock pot or whatever. But I think there's something really interesting about it being topical onto the vulva. But otherwise, yeah, if I'm not trying to do all of that, a nice little edible, like a little gummy, I think just kind of makes it like a little elevated experience. I consider it a little sweet treat.
Annalie, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking to you. You're so interesting, and I think I'm obsessed. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm missing out, and I love the fact that it doesn't have to be a whole thing. It's not like, oh, I need to find a time where I'm feeling particularly sexy and No, I hate that. I love the fact that it's just something you do, and then it's just for you, and you also can look into it and think about it. I love that.
Yes, you're going to officially be a sex explorer. I love it.
Through sexperimenting.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today in this fascinating conversation about orgasms with the amazing Annalie. If you like this program, please rate and review it wherever you get your podcasts. It really does help. And maybe share it with someone who might want to hear it too. You can also like and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and yes, Facebook. This has been Doing Sex, a Vespucci production produced by Hattie Moe and presented by me, Saharzad.